coronary artery will split off into the right marginal artery. So one thing to note is that since everyone's anatomy is a little bit different, there is an anatomical variance that can occur. So in this case, a very common source of anatomical variance when it comes to the coronary arteries is the posterior descending artery. So by this I mean that in some or the majority of people, the posterior descending artery will branch off of the right coronary artery. And this is called right dominant circulation. However, in some individuals, the posterior descending artery will actually branch off of the left circumflex artery. This is not as common, but is still seen in some individuals. And in even rare or even fewer individuals, the posterior descending artery can actually branch off of both the left circumflex artery and the right coronary artery. And this is called codominance. So just as a recap, the coronary arteries that we will be concerned with are sort of labeled in red here. So we have the left coronary artery, which splits off into the left circumflex and the left marginal, the left circumflex and the left anterior descending. And we have the right coronary artery, which usually splits off into the posterior descending artery and always the right marginal artery. So now that we're familiar with a little more of the anatomy, we can head back to Synvascular and start our path planning. So we're back on Synvascular now. We're back on Synvascular. So now that we're back on Synvascular, we can get started by creating a path. So to create a path, just like when we added or removed an image, right-click on Paths, and we can create a path. So you can name the path after the vessel that you're modeling. So for this workshop, I will just start off by path planning the aorta, which again is tends to be a vessel that's fairly easy to identify. And then click OK. And now you'll see that under paths, the aorta has appeared. So we'll double click on this aorta or double click on the name of your path. And you'll notice that on the right-hand side, SV Path Planning tab has popped up. So I'm just going to close the volume visualization one. And for path planning, as a general guideline, there's no set number of points that you'll need, but we just recommend adding enough points so that your path accurately represents the shape of the vessel. And it's sort of like a line diagram. So to add points, you can either add them by clicking the Add button, or you can use Control-Click. And where you click is Control and click where you want the point to be added. So earlier we briefly said that you can toggle around the intersections or the crosshairs by moving your cursor. So as a general guideline, you can add points at the center. If you click on Add, the point will be added at the center point of the crosshairs intersection. So when I clicked Add, just added a point here for me at the middle or center of those two planes. So now you'll notice that we have our first point. And if you ever need to, if you want a clear view, maybe the crosshairs are in the way, again, you can turn them off. But for now, we'll just keep them up. And you'll note, and the points are always added in coordinate form. So the first is x, the second coordinate is y, and the third is z. So if you wanted to add a point manually, maybe there's specific coordinates you want to add the point at, you can select add manually and then type out the coordinates for that point. So I won't be adding one right now, but I'm just going to continue adding points to show you what it's like as the path starts to form. So in general, one way of going about path planning is to scroll through one of the anatomical planes while the other two are sort of constant. So how you can path plan is you can follow the path of the cross section. So locate the display screen where the vessel shows up as close to a circle as possible. And then what you'll do is continue to follow the path of that circle, adding points as you go until you can no longer see the circle. But always double check to see if it's maybe appeared on any of the other screens. So I'll scroll through and then add another point. So you might want to move your crosshairs around so that your point gets added at the center. And then control click. Or you can actually, for any Mac users, that might be command click for you. So now I have 2 points, and I'll continue scrolling through and then going to the center of that vessel, and I can also add here. So at this point we have 3 points, and we can just double check what our path looks like by going to the 3D display and turning off crosshair. So you'll notice a very small, but you can tell that it's there. So this is the path, this little line diagram. This is what we've done so far. I'll turn on the crosshair again, then zoom back out, and you'll just continue doing this and adding more points until you've sort of created an adequate outline of the vessel, or until you can no longer see the center, the circle. So I won't do all of them as it just for the sake of time. But as I scroll through, you'll notice that the circle will continue to move until either you reach until you reach the end of the image set, or until you can't see the vessel anymore. So as you see here, the axial view is increasing, and I think, yeah, if I continue scrolling all the way to the end, you'll still be able to have you'll still be able to plot a point. So for the aorta, you can pretty much usually move from the point you see it to the very end of the image data set, the image data grouping. So that just gives you an idea of how to plot the aorta in general. And I'm going to import the aorta that I've already created. So I'll go to, this is a project that I made in the past. I'll go to paths, and then just make sure that the file name here is empty so that any of your path files will show up. And it's a .path file. So I'll import this aorta one, and I'm going to call it aorta copy. So I'm going to, and at any point you can actually, if you don't want to view something, or if you want to hide something so you can see other components more clearly, you can just unselect that component. So let's say I want